Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive here on Echoes of Ihsan. And today,
Wow.
we're going to be looking at a really fascinating story
Okay.
from Muwatta Imam Malik, book 60.
Okay.
It's called The Supplication of the Unjustly Wronged.
Mm,
And we're going to be focusing on understanding, what this concept of the supplication of the unjustly wronged
right.
actually means. Like, what does it mean for somebody's prayer to be answered,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they've been treated poorly?
Right.
What does that mean in the context of Islamic thought?
Yeah, and I think this is interesting because, we're going back in time
Mm.
to early Islamic history and
Mm.
exploring a story that reveals so much about justice,
Yeah,
leadership, and
yeah,
the power of prayer in
exactly.
Islamic thought.
So the story, centers around the Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab,
Yes.
who's a very important figure in early Islam,
Right.
and his, kind of management of a hima.
Okay.
Now, before we get into the story itself,
Mm.
can you maybe explain for the listeners what a hima was in that historical context?
Yeah, so Wahima
What is it?
back then was essentially a designated area of land,
Okay.
often with valuable resources like water and pasture
Right.
that was placed under protection.
So like a conservation effort?
Kind of like a conservation effort.
Okay.
And it wasn't just about, preserving the land itself, but also about ensuring that the resources within the Hema were used sustainably and fairly by the community,
Right.
especially those who depended on them for their livelihood.
Gotcha. So it's like,
So there's the social justice element to it as well.
yeah, there's like a social element to it where you want to make sure that the people who are living off the land
Right.
are able to continue to do so.
Exactly.
And so in this case, you have Umar, who is entrusting a hima to a man named Hunay,
Mm-hmm.
and he gives him some very interesting advice.
Right.
He says, you know, be just and fear the supplication of the wronged.
That's right.
It's like really heavy.
It is. It's very heavy.
So what's the deeper meaning behind these words?
So it really highlights, a core belief in Islam,
Okay.
which is the power of prayer,
Mhm.
especially the prayers of those who have been treated unjustly.
Right.
And supplication, by the way, just means a very humble and earnest prayer.
Okay.
And the idea is that these prayers hold special significance
Mm-hmm.
and are more likely to be answered by God, who ultimately ensures justice is served.
Okay, so it's not,
It's a big deal.
yeah, it's not just like a casual reminder.
It's not a casual reminder.
It's like a reminder of like a deeply held
Exactly.
belief that has like, real consequences.
That's right.
So he's not just giving Hunay like,
A pep talk.
a pep talk.
Yeah, he's emphasizing a fundamental principle
Yeah.
of Islamic governance.
Right. And it's really interesting because he draws a contrast between how mismanagement
Mm-hmm.
could affect like wealthy livestock owners
Yes.
versus those with smaller herds. So why do you think he makes this distinction?
I think it shows a remarkable level of empathy
Okay.
and understanding
Yeah.
of economic vulnerability.
Okay.
So Umar recognized that if wealthy herders
Mhm.
lost some of their livestock,
Yeah.
they likely had other means of income.
Right.
Like maybe they had date palms or they had some cultivated land
They could make it up.
that could make it up.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have like a smaller herd,
Yeah, if you have a smaller herd, you're losing maybe like
oh, we're done.
one or two animals.
Yeah.
That could be catastrophic.
Yeah.
That could push their family into poverty.
Right.
So he wanted Hunay to grasp,
Mm-hmm.
the potential human cost
The human cost.
of his decisions.
And to even bring it home further,
yeah,
he talks about people bringing their crying children to him,
that's right.
pleading for help if they lose their livelihood.
Yeah.
It's such a
Poignant detail.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a real detail.
It brings the story to life.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And then he says something really interesting.
Yeah.
He says that water and pasturage
Mm-hmm.
are of less value to me than gold and silver.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, like, that seems
It's a little counterintuitive.
at first glance.
At first glance, isn't gold and silver worth more?
Right.
What do you think is going on there?
So it might seem counterintuitive in a purely economic sense.
Okay.
But what Umar is doing
Mm-hmm.
is highlighting a different kind of value system.
Okay.
So he's placing the well-being and livelihoods of his people,
Yeah.
their ability to access essential resources,
Right.
above the accumulation of material wealth.
So he's saying, look.
It really underscores
Yeah.
that true leadership sometimes requires prioritizing people's needs, even when it means foregoing potential economic gain.
Yeah, like it could be a really big hima that could make a lot of money,
Right.
but you gotta
But that's not
take care of the people.
That's not the priority here.
Right, and so that's all tying back into, it all comes back to that.
His fear of the supplication of the wronged.
Yeah.
He's basically saying, like, look,
Right.
if I don't uphold justice, like, there are consequences.
Yeah, there are consequences both for the people and for his own standing before God.
And, I think that really, like, kind of like...
It's a powerful reminder that in Islam, leadership is seen as a trust, a responsibility that carries both worldly and spiritual weight.
Yeah, it's not just like...
It's not just a position of power.
A position of power.
It's a position of responsibility and accountability.
Yeah, and then at the end,
Yeah.
he says something really interesting
Right.
about the land itself.
He does.
He acknowledges the rights of those who were using the land.
Yes.
Even before Islam.
Even before Islam came to the region.
Yeah, so he's saying, like, even though...
And I think that's crucial.
Yeah.
Because he could have just said,
Yeah, like, I'm in charge.
This is an Islamic land now.
Right. We're going to do what we want. Right. But that's not what he does.
And it's not what he does.
He acknowledges pre-Islamic land rights. And I think that demonstrates a remarkable level of respect for established customs and traditions.
So even when making a difficult decision, he's like, I still have to be just.
Exactly. He's not interested in imposing his will or erasing the past. He chooses to build upon what was already there.
And that shows.
Which shows his commitment to fairness and inclusivity.
So we have this like seemingly simple story.
Right.
But it actually has so many layers to it.
It does.
And so I think like the question for us is, if a leader as powerful as Umar was so, aware of the supplication of the wronged.
Fearful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How should we be acting?
That's a good question.
In our own lives.
It's a very good question.
It
invites us to consider...
the ripple effects of our choices. Are we acting with fairness?
Yeah.
And compassion?
Are we thinking about the consequences?
Yeah. Are we thinking about the potential consequences of our actions, especially on those?
Especially those who might be more vulnerable than us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think this story, although it's centuries old, it has a powerful message for today.
Right.
True leadership in any capacity, whether it's at work, in our families, or in our communities, requires a deep commitment to justice, empathy, and genuine concern for the well-being of others.
Yeah. I think that's a great place to end it.
I think so too.
So thank you all for listening. And until next time, peace be with you.